Hello, everybody. All right, seeing our guests come in here. Awesome. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this Orange Day, the BTC White Paper Anniversary Day. I'm your host, Aslan, and I have these wonderful guests from our largest BTCFi leaders in the ecosystem. Today marks the 16-year anniversary of the Bitcoin white paper being released. And we are super excited to talk about Bitcoin and how it has evolved over time and how it has become this essential part of DeFi and this essential part of just the store of value story, right? The digital gold story. Um, I'm Aslan. I lead DeepBook and do all sorts of DeFi stuff here at Miston Labs. I have five of industry leaders in the BTCFi space. I would love to get started with some intros. And first, I would love to pass it on to Luke from SatLayer, and then we'll kind of go forward from there.
All right. Hey, everyone. Luke here, co-founder and, as I like to say, chief janitor of SatLayer. So we are the economic layer for Bitcoin, and our mission is really to make Bitcoin the best and the best smart collateral in the world. And so how we do that is basically by leveraging the restaking infrastructure that we built to make Bitcoin fully programmable collateral, so that as it's already well on its way to become the next global reserve asset, it's also being utilized right as collateral, can be utilized for lending, and work with a lot of the amazing partners on the stream to make that happen.
Awesome. Thank you, Luke. Yeah, collateralization of Bitcoin. I think that's probably one of the best use cases at the moment in BTCFi. Next up, Callan, you want talking about Threshold? I know Threshold's been around for a while, but give me a quick intro.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me on. I'm Callan. You might know me as Sap. I'm the co-founder and CPO at Threshold Labs. We're the labs company that's taken over the protocol and product development for Threshold Network, and the flagship product there being TBTC, which is a fully permissionless, decentralized wrapped Bitcoin assets on a number of different chains, and excited to be building our liquidity base on Sui as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Callan. TBTC, that is like at least the one that I remember, the oldest variant of BTC available in DeFi.
Close
next
to
up,
and
Charlie.
oldest surviving.
Oh, there we go. Charlie from BitLayer, would love to get an intro from you.
Thank you, Aslan. Hey, everybody. This is Charlie, co-founder of BitLayer. So BitLayer, we started as a BVM builder since 2 years ago, doing the ordinal season. We started as a Bitcoin L2 network. Since this year, we've been much more focused on the YBDC Bitcoin assets, pretty much actively working with all the blue chip DeFi protocols on Sui. Very exciting to work with this amazing DeFi ecosystem.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie. Vinny, Momentum. I know you guys have a lot of been making a lot of noise lately. Can you give me a little intro and how you guys are involved with BTCFi?
Hey guys, first of all, thanks for having us here. Pretty excited. My name is Vinny. I'm the CSO of Momentum. So many of you know us for our spot DEX. We're the main spot DEX on Sui, but we do have a lot of other products. We are the main multi-sig solution for the entire Move ecosystem. We also have yield products, and we also recently announced Momentum X and our perpetuals as well. We're very excited. We do a lot of stuff with the Sui ecosystem, especially in BTCFi. So I'm pretty excited to walk through a lot of partners later on.
Awesome. Thank you, Vinny. Excited to hear more about that. And finally, Jacob Lombard.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. Jacob Phillips, one of the co-founders of Lombard. I spent a few years working on a perp DEX and spent a few years investing at Polychain before I was working on Lombard. We've been at this for about a year and a half. You probably know us from LBTC, our liquid staked representation of Bitcoin that's integrated into all the major applications. But along the journey of building LBTC, we basically built out this full stack that we're now sort of breaking out into its respective pieces, each of which has some ability to live as a standalone product at the security layer, developer layer, and distribution layer. Spent a lot of my time lately focused on specifically on the developer layer, the Lombard SDK, which you can think of. I'm sure we'll get into this, but you can think of this as an alternative to Bitcoin L2s that sort of give all app developers in the Sui ecosystem, ETH ecosystem, Solana, wherever the best applications are built, all of the tools they would need to build, great experiences with Bitcoin. Because I think the more and more I consider why people are or are not using Bitcoin on chain, it's due to the UX or I should say relative UX of on chain finance versus centralized apps. So I think we're putting a lot of thought into how to solve that.
Totally agree with you on that, Jacob. I think the UX is the biggest hurdle, especially in DeFi, right? When you have to wait these, finality times and whatnot. That's why I think centralized exchanges are kind of dominating in the space for now. But I think we're here to change that.
Yeah, I'd say traditionally I'm almost like a little bit too old school DeFi when I think of this problem. Like I for a long time thought it wasn't a problem. Like DeFi Summer, people would create like the craziest interfaces that were like impossible to use, but the DeFi degens loved it, and that was the only people we're building for. Now the game has very much changed, and so I think things that didn't used to matter now matter a whole hell of a lot more.
Oh yeah, 100%. But it's good, right? Iteration makes better products, and competition, really adds fuel to the fire. Okay, so we're going to shift gears a little bit here. I'm going to go through each of the protocols, do a little bit of a chat on like what you guys are building and what's new, and also give you an opportunity to share anything from your side through a screen share or a presentation or a demo or anything like that. Okay. Would love to start with Luke from SatLayer. Luke, you've been helping move Bitcoin's liquidity into the Sui ecosystem. What does it take to make Bitcoin truly composable across chains? So like what are kind of what are there any things that are that we don't really notice that makes it like difficult to do that, or have you like figured out some solutions that kind of have allowed you to go cross chain and make this very composable?
Yeah, I think it's very much been a joint effort with a lot of the folks here you see on the stream, right? With like Jacob and the team at Lombard, Charlie and the team at BitLayer, because I think especially when you think about starting from native Bitcoin, right? And kind of native Bitcoin on Bitcoin and not on any other chain, right? That's generally been a major point of friction. And that's where I think Jacob will, I'm sure, share more later in terms of like the SDK that they built and the ability for them to take in native BTC, right, and then mint LBTC on Sui and on other chains, and then also the work that the BitLayer team has done in terms of like YBTC that we also take as collateral, and I think it's still, I think certainly for like DeFi natives, right? As Jacob was mentioning earlier, I think it's not too bad, but I think even for a lot of us in the space, right, like just waiting for things to like for all the confirmation, especially on the Bitcoin side, right, and then for like if there is bridging involved, that's certainly still significant friction, and so that's something that I think everyone is actively working towards improving. And then I think for us, kind of the way we think about it is not only having the asset represented on different chains, but actually being able to do a lot of things with it, right? So that's where being able to kind of deposit these various assets into SatLayer, right? Whether it's on Sui or other chains, and then using that to actually secure kind of meaningful use cases, right? So a big use case for us is actually Bitcoin-backed insurance, which I'll get into in a little bit. But I think the other design decision that we made early on is that for each asset that we take, we mint a receipt token for it so that it can then go further into DeFi, right, on a respective chain, right? We actually recently launched together with the Momentum team and BitLayer the SAT YBTC and YBTC liquidity pool on Momentum, and so that's one example of giving users kind of more choice in terms of what additional things can they do, right, with their Bitcoin.
I think the whole receipt token is such like a DeFi native idea, right? We just maximize composability with stuff like that, and then you can incorporate it in other DeFi protocols, and the fact that all DeFi protocols are just naturally permissionless, it really makes that whole thing like very cohesive and work really well, and something that we really don't have in TradFi, right? So I think that's super cool. I think the Bitcoin insurance component, that's very interesting because I think for a long time it has been a little bit difficult to like figure out exactly what do we do with Bitcoin and DeFi, and Bitcoin insurance is super interesting. Do you want to kind of chat about like what are the latest use cases that you guys have been working on, and talk a little bit about what that looks like in the future?
Yeah, 100%. So that is one of the big use cases that we've been working on for actually the past couple quarters, is Bitcoin-backed insurance, right? And this is just from, I think, working with a lot of our users and engaging with, some of the institutional LPs that we have, right? I think in many ways, everyone in the space kind of treats Bitcoin a bit differently than all these other assets, right? I think with Bitcoin, generally folks are interested in yield, right? But they first care about security and risk and principal protection. And so that's why we kind of landed on this Bitcoin-backed insurance product that will basically, in addition to all the existing safeguards in DeFi, right, about like building, sound protocol design and then having audits, right, and then just withstanding the test of time of having this additional layer of assurance, right, via Bitcoin-backed insurance, so that, right, it's kind of like it's kind of like recently with all the kind of liquidations and perp dexes having this like ADL feature. It's like having an additional line of defense, right? That is a insurance logic that's on chain, right? That will then cover, right, if there's an exploit or there's a slashing event, right? And so that's kind of the basic idea behind it, and it's really kind of taking, I think, what's been built already in terms of on-chain and crypto insurance, right, and taking that to the next level, and then having the best collateral behind it, which is Bitcoin. Because I think it's kind of it's interesting, but I think not well-known fact that the biggest insurance companies in the world, they individually have like $1 trillion in assets in terms of like the top 5 companies, right? And so like between the top 5, they could actually house all of Bitcoin. For us, it's really kind of like bring that business model on chain and then putting the best asset behind it. That's not just, kind of dollar-based assets, right? Or like ETH, for example, but actually Bitcoin as the collateral asset for that.
I know one thing about insurance, and that is the fact that that's a very lucrative business. Somehow, all of the insurance companies always make money regardless of market conditions in some way, which is phenomenal, really. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah,
now,
100%. Just to add on that, right? Like the biggest companies, like the guys with the $1 trillion in AUM, they're actually making like 8 to 20% yield at that scale, which is just crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Operating at very high leverage too, right?
Yes. Yeah. But like very different type of leverage where it's like they basically restate their collateral to ensure like uncorrelated risks, right, from an insurance perspective. So that's like the leverage that they use.
And this is also a good way to essentially distribute the risks amongst more participants, right? Like instead of having all of the risk in one place, you essentially build out a new product, say, hey, like there's also this area. If you guys want to participate, then it alleviates some of this risks. And the more we can distribute that risk, the more kind of flexible the whole system becomes.
Yep, 100%. And it's also a way, and like I think this is one of the unique features of restaking is you're able to actually, slash and execute things based on-chain and off-chain events. And so this is where over time, right, this, kind of Bitcoin-backed insurance will actually cover off-chain traditional insurance risks and generate uncorrelated yield.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'll be honest, I have heard about BTC, Bitcoin-backed insurance before, but I didn't really understand exactly. But you have really clarified a lot of the details for me. I'd love to go to Callan from Threshold and talk a little bit about TBTC. I know TBTC has been around for quite a while, and for a couple of years, and you guys were like one of the earlier BTC options for DeFi. How have you guys, how was your experience kind of expanding that to Sui, and kind of how has that journey been like over time?
Yeah, I think overall the experience deploying to Sui has been a really good one. I mean, the Miston Labs team and the ecosystem has been super supportive. So very enjoyable. But zooming out a little bit and looking at the kind of track record, and yeah, we've been around in the space since 2020. The V1 went live in 2020, and the V2 went live in 2023, I believe. And since then, we've seen kind of similar protocols like Ren BTC, for example, fall by the wayside. And I think that's something that we pride ourselves on, is having this secure architecture at the bottom of the stack that's keeping all the Bitcoin custody in place. So things have changed quite a lot. I mean, the whole BitcoinFi category has emerged since then. And when we were first starting, like even DeFi was still in its early stages. So watching the industry grow and watching all of these new projects come and build the Bitcoin economy alongside us and collaborating with us is super exciting, I think. And I agree with all the sentiment here that Bitcoin being this pristine asset class, and it's got the capacity to underwrite a huge financial industry in the future. And I'm excited to be part of the infrastructure and the rails to enable that on chain and outside of that as well.
Yeah, I love that. One of the interesting things, as we kind of build out the BTCFi story on Sui, I've done like a ton of research into like all of the different implementations of Bitcoin, and there are just so much variety in like the trade-offs and the decisions that have gone into each of the variations of BTC that's available. And to be honest, there is demand for every kind, because all of them have different risk profiles and different actual utilities and things like that. But speaking of utility, how do you think, what role do you think Threshold and TBTC play in terms of like, growing the BTCFi story on Sui, or just BTCFi generally, right? What are you guys working on, and how do you see the future and what that might look like?
Yeah, I think Threshold and TBTC plays a pivotal role in enabling Bitcoin liquidity on chain. Kind of see it as Bitcoin liquidity rails, in that we have this programmable asset in TBTC, and we have all the programmable infrastructure, Sui blockchain, and all of the other programmable blockchains out there. And I think that's just a better environment in which to do business generally, in terms of having better trust assumptions, better security guarantees, and transparency. And the programmability, I think, is really something that can't be overstated. Like, to be able to have financial programmability that you can execute in business logic, and then using an asset like TBTC to do the settlements. So we're liquidity rails. You can deploy Bitcoin into DeFi onto Sui directly, but you can also use it as a means of reconciling back to Bitcoin. So ultimately, people doing finance on chain, but you want to return back to the base layer on some level. If you have large portion of your assets, or you have a successful business transaction, you profit a lot of Bitcoin, maybe you want to put that under lock and key. So we kind of can be seen as settlement rails to Bitcoin as well from this new emerging Bitcoin economy on chain.
Yeah, the settlement layer idea is so vital. When everything is going well and everything is going up, we kind of forget about the settlement. We're fine trading synthetics, and we're fine just doing a bunch of degen stuff. But when all of that has to be delevered and all of that has to actually settle at some point, like what happened on Black Friday the other week, we kind of realized, hey, like actually settlement layer is actually extremely important. Do you guys have what's the latest with Threshold? Do you have anything you want to show us?
Yeah, I mean, we're working on a lot at the moment. I've got some Sui specific updates that I can share, and I will preface this by saying there are some larger announcements in the remainder of this year that I'm very excited about. But for now, we'll focus on some of the specifics on Sui. So just as an overview, we have a new gasless minting feature that will go live soon, which is basically a way of just depositing Bitcoin directly to Sui. Then we have Sui to Bitcoin redemptions directly from Sui as well. And then this new T staking rebate feature that I'll get into in a little bit more detail. Gasless minting, kind of removing the need to sign a transaction on Sui in order to execute a minting deposit. So instead, you go to the Threshold app and you have a Bitcoin address that's generated for you, and you deposit that Bitcoin, and then the TBDC will arrive directly to your Sui wallet. You don't need to execute any transactions on Sui. So that's a UX improvement, and kind of has this nice native feel of just depositing Bitcoin to Sui, which I really like. You only have to pay the Bitcoin transaction fee, and no actions required on Sui. So excited to launch that, and that'll improve the minting UX flow. And then we'll have this Sui redemption feature. We're just talking about kind of settlement before and how important it is. And it means that you can withdraw directly from Sui. At the moment, the TBTC to BTC route, unfortunately, goes via Ethereum, because that's where much of the logic of the TBTC protocol is currently housed. but instead you'll be able to go directly from SUI, which I think will also enhance that native experience. And something about our redemptions as well, and talking about this settlement layer, is the speed at which you can redeem. And ours is in the kind of hours mark. It's 3 to 5 hours, which is something that would really like to get down. And depends a lot on sometimes the network congestions on Bitcoin mainnet and the gas fees as well. So sometimes transaction can get stuck in the mempool. But if we can bring that down, then it's going to be much more usable from a market maker and asset manager perspective, which I think is why TBDC is preferential in some cases, because we do have this kind of rapid settlement, relatively speaking. And then there's this new kind of T staking rebate feature, which is an experiment in tokenomics and something that we're quite excited about and interested in that you can stake the T token, which is our network token, in order to get a rebate on the redemption fee. At the moment, there's a free mint for TBDC and a 20 basis point redemption fee. But if you stake T, then you have this rolling window of fee waiver. So you can get free redemptions rather than having to pay that 20 basis point redemption fee. We think this feature is going to be really interesting to market makers and others that want to facilitate Bitcoin redemptions at speed. And this is another element, I guess, like there's like the infrastructure layer, which has all of the latency as an artifact of the Bitcoin mainnet. But then you can have this service layer built on top, where you have market makers or other asset managers that can provide redemptions based on their own liquidity on the books, and they're making some kind of spread in terms of the fees that they're offering. And that's a way of offering much faster settlement for Bitcoin, which I think is something that, overall we need to have rapid settlement in order to enable the Bitcoin economy. So this is a feature within that. And more on a visual basis, we're going to have a new front end soon. I think this is the first public teaser of the front end. So I'm excited to be sharing that here today. It's a big revamp. I mean, if you go to the existing Threshold app, you can see it for how it was before the Threshold Labs takeover, and it's legacy. It's got some redundant features that need to be kind of deprecated. But this new app, this new feel is part of a major rework that we're doing for Threshold Identity, and I'm really excited to show that and some of these additional features as well that are going to make the Bitcoin user experience a lot better. So yeah, thanks for hearing the new features, and stay tuned for the major updates later this year.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Callan. The new sleek UI looks very cool. We got direct, minting and burning through SUI, like boom, that's what we need. And finally, once we get that, the withdrawal time compressed, I think that is when we're really going to start, making it work a lot better with DeFi. Super excited for all the changes, super excited for the T rebates. I think that's going to be interesting. Would love to see, how that works out, how that plays out. And yeah, looking forward to all these new product ships and all the new unreleased things that you mentioned. I guess you didn't mention them, but yeah, I'll be paying attention to what you guys do for the rest of the year.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Aslan.
Yeah. Charlie, speaking of, the programmability of DeFi, right? We just talked about, how it takes a couple of hours to get your Bitcoin withdrawn, but we know that in DeFi, a lot of transactions settle very quickly. Like on SUI, we have sub-second finality. How do we balance Bitcoin stability with DeFi's agility, right? How do we kind of think about that problem, and how do you guys think about that problem?
Yeah, great question, Aslam. I think, well, first of all, I know SUI as a layer one many years ago, before you guys actually started the whole BTCFi efforts. I remember you guys were very active on gaming and many other kind of consumer-facing application, right, that require high throughputs, right? So I personally, my Web3 kind of career background, I was pretty involved with like other kind of layer one or layer zero ecosystems, such as Polkadot, Ethereum layer two, like Polygon. So I see a lot of different ecosystem with different kind of adoption cycle. So SUI definitely have a very strong infrastructure base to bring, programmable consumer-facing applications. As I mentioned about DeFi require really high level of user experience, right? So a lot of hurdles about when we talk about mass adoption is actually bad UI UX, right? In the last couple of years, we see that happen on Ethereum layer one with the gas fees, and we saw a lot of the DeFi protocols. With our journey and our experience is a bit kind of unique, right? So we started as literally doing this kind of a bear cycle of nothing really kind of worked, in 2023, and there was only one thing which had a pretty interesting consumer facing hype, that was ordinals. So we brought a lot of kind of engagement and also the Bitcoiners attention to our community in early days of BitLayer. That was through the ordinals BRC20 era. Actually, the founder of BRC20 is also our active advisor. We've been accumulating a lot of engaging a lot of those folks, right, that have been trying to put that Bitcoin to work, right? And then obviously that's kind of the evolution. Oh, well, we need, now we have all the assets on Bitcoin network, especially all the variants and even some kind of inscriptions. What do we can do DeFi use case around that, right? So simply put, you cannot do that natively on Bitcoin layer 1. It was never designed to be like that. The throughput is only 7 TPS, right, and all that. And then we kind of built our kind of L2 network. We gained a lot of experiences by working with all the top tier kind of Web3 wallets. That's kind of the user base. We kind of after we kind of shift to our focus to YBDC, we're kind of bringing the user base to new ecosystem as Sui. And I think it's an interesting kind of merge of a user base, right? And in Sui, I think the native users, from my user experience, that you have a lot of kind of a high demand, high level UI UX kind of a user base, right, that require scalability solutions to do things on gaming and other kind of scalable DeFi use cases. And then you have all the Bitcoiners, right? They care about security, right? And that's kind of why we focus on the BitVM, building this kind of new trust minimized bridging solution and so on. So that's like users' perspective is quite different, but eventually they kind of merge together now. Like when we talk about why we wanted to partner with ecosystem as Sui, making BTCFi happening in ecosystem, inside ecosystem outside of Bitcoin, right, is because users demand kind of evolve a bit as well, right? From the beginning, everybody wants to see activity happening only on Bitcoin layer 1, right? And then they notice the experience is not really ideal, and they can only do that much, right? And then more and more people feel like, okay, there's gonna be some interesting BTCFi use cases in other ecosystem, not just on Bitcoin layer 1, right? It can actually happen on Sui. So that's kind of how I see the evolution, right? When we talk about, like, we bring quite a lot of user base from our own community to the partners, potentially to Momentum and Sell Later and some others as well in Sui. That user education is pretty interesting, unique. That was very different than what we thought like 2 years ago when we were actually starting up with BitLayer. So I think it's been an interesting journey, and I'm very looking forward to do more and more education for the BTCFi on Sui ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. What I thought was super interesting that you said was, originally everybody wanted to do everything on Bitcoin, but it's designed for something very specific. And we did not at the time know that there would be a use case for a different version of like a layer 2, right? Not only until we actually built you actually built BitLayer, you realized, hey, actually there are users for this as well. And I think one of the things that I have been learning the last year or 2 years is that, like, nothing is black and white. Nothing is like, decentralization maxi or like, pure only Bitcoin, and nothing is like the other side where it's like, oh, we just maximize TPS. There are users at all parts of the spectrum. And I think the point that you made of, like, there being an intersection of users between like BitLayer L2 and Sui, I think that's something that is kind of that is highlighted here, right? The fact that, when you start making it more scalable and you start making it more high frequency, then you start overlapping with other high frequency chains. And speaking of that and like the scalability, what does your ideal BTC based layer 2 look like when it's paired with Sui's execution speed? Like, do you think there's a world where we get to a place where, the Bitcoin layer 2 is like as fast, or like, is able to kind of execute these fast transactions with high throughput?
Yeah, so I think the whole idea of L2, it's getting broader definition, right? And I think we kind of zoom back to our original mission, why we start to doing things with BitLayer, is actually activating and bring the DeFi use case to Bitcoiners, right? And that's kind of the mission. which exact execution layer it could be, on how the data availability, the whole settlement, the whole smart contract framework is going to be EVM, SVM, or SWI movement. It became more like a tactical kind of a question to answer, and sometimes even just a tribalism kind of question, right? Because different people have subjective different opinions. So I think the whole mission is still the same. We want to activate and bring Bitcoin DeFi, right? That's kind of the whole adoption mission. So that's kind of how we see it, right? So when I talk to a lot of people, what exactly Billy is offering right now is we're doing two things, right? One is the BVM implementation. We are one of the key builders in the BVM Alliance. We've been kind of working on this new generation of Bitcoin bridging solution, which is not just a multi-sig, kind of using the Bitcoin script to do kind of a proper approach, right? To provide this more trust minimized way of bridging solution. So that's still kind of the key innovation we've been working on. We launched the mainnet version, the Chronicle bridge between Bitcoin layer 1 and the SWI. The Chronicle version already launched in July. So that's kind of already in the production mode. We have users kind of bridge over, their BTC and actually mint on SWI network there already. And then the second thing is I think we want to kind of design kind of interesting, user behavior, right? And I think that's kind of the collective efforts. It's not just only us can make it happen. Essentially, it's not just bring the Bitcoiner, right, then their assets in a new chain and then doing nothing, because that's not the goal, right? Honestly, if everybody's having this kind of maxi stand, you just hold a Bitcoin doing nothing, which is the Bitcoin maxi stand, right, in front of a lot of Bitcoin people like we've been talking to the last 2 years. It's not going to be useful, right, for a high scalable ecosystem like SWI, because if they are BTC doing nothing in SWI, then why bother to bring them over, right? So I think that's kind of the interesting operational challenges. So we have been kind of exploring and also learning by doing, and working with partners like blue chip protocols like Momentum and Set Layer and many others. And I think the third part I want to mention is Layer. We are one of the first kind of Bitcoin project heavily supported by the Bitcoin miners like F2 Pool, N Pool, and Spider Pool. We need to get all these miners really kind of engaged with us. I think that's kind of it takes a process, right? As I mentioned, while everybody talked about Bitcoin DeFi 2 years ago, everybody was taking the maxi stand, and through this evolution and also the kind of intersection you just mentioned, people are changing their opinion. Even some of the Bitcoin OGs also want to see like what's kind of the new offering and the solutions they could actually utilize, right? And it's kind of how we see it, like seeing as believing. Until they see the solutions, they see the product, they wouldn't really believe or wouldn't really actually think about it and explore, right? So that's kind of our mission, right? We need to offer them like kind of what's possible there. Kind of just quickly maybe share the screen, like just like
yes,
very
please.
high level. The things are already available in the product. So this is kind of our build layer BVM bridge, kind of the production model product. As you see, we have the Bitcoin version and all the EVM networks, and also the Chronicle bridge we built with.
Charlie, I don't think you're sharing screen.
Oh really? Okay, let me try.
I'm not seeing it.
Can you see it?
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. This is only allowed, I guess, the only one window. Yeah. So this is kind of our bridge product kind of UI, and we have the Chronic version with SWI network, pretty much integrated all the kind of SWI supported Web3 wallets. As I mentioned, right, working with all these wallets is very interesting kind of experiences. We kind of were designing a lot of more campaigns with some of them over the time. And I guess the other one I can share is kind of in high level, right? We believe the bridging solution in the next evolution could be this kind of two-way peg-in, peg-out kind of model. So that's kind of how we are focusing on building the BVM approach to bring kind of the BTC and have this kind of more trust minimized way to bring them over to a new ecosystem such as SWI as a kind of the Bitcoin DeFi gateway. So yeah, that's kind of I think it takes time about these kind of things happen. It takes education. It takes a lot of presentation and so on. But I think it's kind of working already.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Charlie, for sharing all that. It takes people to, take on risk and actually build new products to actually prove that there might be demand for something that nobody believes in. And you guys are on the forefront of that. And one other thing that you mentioned of like bringing miners in, I think that's actually a very good point too. And if we really think about it, why can't these miners, use their setup as collateral to borrow assets, or why can't they hedge their energy costs against their Bitcoin and like future earnings? And I think a lot of those things can be unlocked through DeFi. And I'm glad that somebody as smart as you are, is thinking about those problems.
And ultimately, they are one of the largest Bitcoin holders.
Yeah, that's true too. Yes, that's right. They're the biggest holders. That's right. Awesome. I think speaking of use cases, I think this is a perfect segue for Momentum. I know Momentum has tons of BTC pools. I think you guys are doing a lot with Bitcoin. Vinny, can you tell me a little bit about BTC backed liquidity and how that's changing the landscape, and how is Momentum positioned for BTCFi?
Yeah, so Momentum is kind of like the unified liquidity engine for BTCFi and Sui. So think of it as where Bitcoin's depth becomes composable, fast, and productive on chain. So, as we all know, the core friction has been like fragmentation. So BTC liquidity is scattered, across many wrappers and chains, really slow to deploy and hard to integrate. So on Sui, Momentum concentrates that liquidity and plugs it directly into our spot market, our LP strategies, as well as like cross ecosystem integrations, right, with the near instant finality that Sui provides. We're also the most active protocol, bringing partnerships into the Sui ecosystem, especially in BTCFi. So since mid-July, all major BTCFi launches have been launched exclusively through Momentum. I'll just quickly screen share the platform so you can just kind of see some of our trading pairs. Yeah. Is that show for you guys?
Yep.
Yeah. So we've been the launch partner for protocols like BitLayer and SatLayer, who are here, of course, but also XBTC by OKX, Merlin BTC, Bedrock BTC, and also Visual BTC. So you can see all the different BTC related pairs on here if you want to check it out on our website, mt.finance. But by doing this, we can ensure the assets arrive in coordinated liquidity, listings, and integrations on day one. So for users, this means that the BTC doesn't just sit idle; it moves through strategies earning yield. And for builders, it's reduced time to liquidity and a ready distribution network. So in short, Momentum turns BTC into productive capital at scale on Sui.
I love it. It's one thing about like getting BTC on DeFi is that whole trust component of like, is there going to be liquidity? Can I actually do stuff with Bitcoin? And having all of that in one place on Momentum kind of adds to that trust, right? Like, so if I see a new BTC variant, I know that, hey, Momentum is where all the legitimate strong BTC variants are stored, and it kind of adds to that trust, and also allows users to just do whatever they want with it, whether it's like swapping. And I know you mentioned the strategies and the yield component, which I know has been like a very big story the last couple of years too, or the last couple of months. And how does the ultra fast execution on Sui change the experience for BTC backed asset traders or market makers? Like, are we enabling a new type of experience that you just through DeFi that you can't necessarily get elsewhere?
Yeah, I think the ultra fast finality in Sui, it removes the latency and uncertainty that have traditionally slowed on-chain BTC trading. So with your parallel execution and sub-second finality, market makers can do things like quote tighter spreads, rebalance faster, and hedge inventory with like an exchange rate, predictability, while still retaining the self-custody and full on-chain transparency. For BTC-backed assets in particular, that translates to things like fewer missed hedges, lower slippage, more efficient cross-venue arbitrage. So especially the deterministic fills and the consistent gas behavior on Sui improves the inventory management and deepens the liquidity, leading to fairer pricing and smoother execution across the board. So I guess in short, kind of Sui makes that BTCFi truly usable at scale and gives you that sort of like centralized exchange grade performance with that on-chain transparency.
Yeah, and you mentioned the arbitrage. I think that's actually very important, especially when we have the BTC representations that are not truly native, which can sometimes depeg a little bit. But having that deep liquidity and having market makers essentially to be able to quote as tight as possible really alleviates that risk. And I love that Momentum is here to kind of enable all of those functionalities. Awesome. I would love to kind of jump to Jacob. I know, Jacob, you've been waiting a little bit, but I would love to talk a little bit about Lombard as well, and talk about what you guys have going on. Bitcoin was built on the idea of self-sovereignty. How do you maintain that spirit when introducing leverage and borrowing? This is a good one.
So Lombard, I would say, indirectly introduces the opportunity to leverage your Bitcoin in different ways. So I wouldn't say this is like a fundamental property of the system, because all Bitcoin that's deposited into Lombard stays one-to-one back. Our goal was to create, at a time when nothing else really existed, that was sort of trusted at scale, a neutral primitive that retail and institutions could trust alike. So we went out and we built like a consortium of institutional players to act as the fundamental security partners within the Lombard infra. This then provided a secure enough foundation that then people were able to start, leveraging their Bitcoin in different ways. And I think one of the other things was, when we were starting Lombard, there were many other Bitcoin primitives out there. WBTC was quite large at the time, but there'd never been this like explosive moment for Bitcoin DeFi. I think that Lombard and sort of the culmination of a lot of the excitement around Bitcoin staking sort of created this. For the first time, you saw like the biggest DeFi applications on ETH paying attention to Bitcoin in a way that they never had before. So now you see Lombard products on Aave and Fluid and Camino and Juplend and all the Maple, all the major lending protocols, to the point where Lombard as a system fundamentally is just a platform for enabling you to transform your Bitcoin from on Bitcoin L1 now into any other ecosystem. But then once you do with it there is sort of up to you. The core fundamental property is that the asset itself, the representative asset LBTC or our new asset we just announced yesterday, BTCB, will be representative of underlying in a non-custodial setup, non-custodial, custodied by a group of 15 of the largest institutions in the world. So you can take that self-custody primitive and use it in many different ways. Borrowlend is of course one of the core use cases that people I think are focused on. So we have some more stuff coming out on this front as well. Sort of have been jamming with a number of our close partners on how to do this with even less trust assumptions than what you would get from the standard consortium.
Yeah, it sounds like where the direction that we're going in is like less trust assumptions, faster minting and burning, more use cases. And I think on the use cases side of things is where you guys excel here. Because
I think that's right. Can I make one more comment on that?
Yes, please.
I think it is true that trust assumptions, like we're heading in the direction of less and less trust assumptions. But I think there is something to be said about like diminishing returns from the user's perspective. And I go back and forth on this quite a bit, but for a long time, Bitcoin DeFi has been trying to make things happen. Hyperliquid spins up a 2 or 3 multi-sig, and now all of a sudden is doing more Bitcoin trading volume than anybody in Bitcoin DeFi had ever even thought about doing beforehand. So I want to approach trust in a very pragmatic way. And pragmatically, the thing that actually matters is the utility. If we created like the largest liquidity pool for borrow lend activity or something like that, or trading on chain, users would use it sort of regardless of, not regardless of the security setup. Certainly there's like different levels to this, but I do think there are plenty of things that get by. Even like WBTC, we know this still has today, some trust assumptions that people sort of debate, but yet the asset continues to be used because there's deep liquidity on chain. And so the way we've always thought about this is like, this needs to sort of be built out in layers. There's trust is a multivariable equation here, and I think that a consortium of, if you want to secure like $1 billion or like a couple $100 million or something like that, maybe you can get away with a multi-sig. If you want to secure like 10 billion or like $25 billion of Bitcoin, you're going to need something more secure. And I think the only technology we have ready to go today is the sort of consortium model. If you want to secure like, $1 trillion or something like that, I think the trustless tech is is certainly better than a consortium model, but it depends how much users will sort of recognize that. Like, I think all this tech needs to be viewed in the context of trade-off spectrums. I think for most people, large institutions, a decentralized group of them securing your Bitcoin is probably good enough. So I think we're kind of taking this in stages.
I love that. You made such a great point with, and I think this kind of goes back to what Charlie said earlier. Until you build it, you don't really know, if there's going to be users for it. And what you said about Hyperliquid spinning up a multi-sig, and all of a sudden they have all these users, that kind of flipped the switch in me as well, kind of realizing that, wait a second, maybe it is a spectrum. Maybe not everybody wants like maximum decentralization, and a lot of people do care about UX, and that kind of unlocks so many new kind of potential products that you kind of thought that it would be a waste of time to build. And
totally,
I agree with you. It's a scalability story. At some levels, you want to have one solution versus another. Yeah, so many good ones that you mentioned.
Totally. I was going back and forth with this with another person on Twitter, maybe like 3 days before the Bybit hack, and I was like, "There's no way this is just a multi-sig. That would be crazy." And sure enough, it's people clicking buttons in the safe, but you don't think about that when you go to the Bybit interface or like any centralized exchange interface. You just think like this is a trusted brand. I'm sure they've kind of figured it out on the back end, and more, I feel that that's what's going to happen with users in DeFi. And of course, the principled builder in me wants to do everything to maximize security, but I think we do need to make some sort of practical trade-offs. Like what is sort of good enough for the current the current use case or the current user. Of course, security is Lombard's number one priority, but I think there's multiple ways to sort of make that satisfactory. Yeah,
100% agree with you. What happens in practice is sometimes a lot different than what happens in theory.
Exactly.
Are there any things that are coming up for Lombard? Anything that you want to share as on your side, and then I can go into kind of some closing remarks and one last question for the whole round.
Yeah, definitely. Let me share one quick thing. So just yesterday we announced the acquisition of BTCB, $500 million Bitcoin wrapper in the Avalanche ecosystem. Launched during DeFi summer. Avalanche kind of launched their own Bitcoin asset, sort of recognized the operational overhead it took to run it. I mean, I think they wanted to take the asset cross chain, but didn't have a great way to do it. Sort of the perfect fit for what Lombard was looking to do. We had sort of distributed LBTC, a liquid staked representation of Bitcoin throughout all of DeFi on many different chains. In all the major protocols, and we're looking for something a little bit more. Like LBTC is the sort of ideal capital efficient yield bearing Bitcoin collateral. So if you're borrowing against your Bitcoin or using it to trade perps or something like this, I do think that LBTC is the best way to do it. But there's a lot of users who, for whatever reason, don't want to trust an underlying staking protocol, don't want to put their Bitcoin at risk, slashing risk, or for other use cases, Bitcoin trading specifically, which I think is one of the biggest opportunities that nobody has cracked just yet, and frankly is the driver of all fundamental or underlying yield for Bitcoin. I think necessitates just a generic wrapped version. Wrapped meaning not yield bearing. The underlying Bitcoin stays with the consortium, but is not staked into any other sort of yield protocol. So I put out this tweet yesterday, and I was sort of trying to articulate like why this matters, because for a lot of people, I realized that when I was pitching this beforehand, kind of leaking it to people and whatnot, I didn't get quite the reaction I was hoping to get. Like, oh, Lombard's a Bitcoin wrapper, or launching a Bitcoin wrapper, this should be a really good thing. But I think they weren't seeing necessarily what I was seeing. So I wanted to talk through this game plan just a little bit. When I say Bitcoin DeFi is broken, what I really mean is people don't think of Bitcoin on chain the way that they should. There's these weird colors, there's prefixes and suffixes. It just doesn't look and feel like native Bitcoin. But when you go to, like I said, when you go to an centralized exchange, any centralized app, you don't know anything about their underlying trust assumptions. But you just, it feels like you're actually using your BTC because you assume you trust in that brand, you trust in that application that they figured out the underlying trust assumption. So I think, if DeFi is going to see the light of day, we have to be competitive with CeFi. I think the days of us assuming that people are just going to come on chain and, just for the hell of it, for a lot of these reasons that we've pitched, they sort of don't matter. All of the breakthrough DeFi applications that I can think of outside of like very simple collateralization have come from sort of blending that line, like making some trade-offs in the short term, sort of preserving the things that are really important, like not like self-custody, for example. This is something that's fundamental to DeFi. This can't be broken. But some of the user experience things need to be tweaked in the short term to onboard users. And over time, I think we can introduce more and more functionality of DeFi as the ecosystem becomes battle tested. But in the meantime, when you go to a DeFi app, you want to see Bitcoin. You want unified liquidity. You don't want to click the drop-down menu and see fragmented liquidity across 4 different Bitcoin wrappers. That's terrible UX. You need, and developers right now, if you want to build with Bitcoin, you really can't craft the best user experience you're trying to. Even I think like Callan was talking earlier about, one of the things they did for Sui, sort of like abstracted minting effectively. Like this I think is like a brilliant start. And I think there's like a lot of different things that you can do for developers to make it easy, such that when a user comes to their front end, they only have to think about Bitcoin. They almost don't even have to think about Sui as the underlying chain. Sui is just the substrate which enables the sort of UX that they're trying to create. But what we've definitely seen is like, there are many other wrappers out in the game, and I think what's sort of been missing is the focus on this as like a developer layer, developer tooling. So we spent a lot of time on the Lombard SDK, and I think this is going to become the foundation of everything we're pitching. When I go out and you won't sort of hear me pitching BTCB very deeply, because I fundamentally believe this should be in the background. What I really am pitching is the user experience of making using Bitcoin on chain look and feel exactly like you would on a centralized exchange. The hope is that I think my like dream with BTCB or Lombard infrastructure in general would be that people would come to on-chain finance, acquire Bitcoin, use it in on-chain finance, and just let it sit in their ETH, Solana, Sui wallet and never leave. Like if you could do the full life cycle of owning the world's first non-sovereign digital currency, like without having to ever touch Bitcoin L1, I think that would be I think that would be a huge a green flag for everything that we have built at Lombard. So that's kind of the gist of it. We just announced this sort of technical integration will happen here in a couple of weeks, and yeah, this is sort of just another piece of the puzzle. We built the Lombard SDK initially to introduce staking yield into exchanges, and then realized that this can kind of fit within any application. And if you're an application, you want to have all of the different tools available to you. So you'll have staked Bitcoin, yield vaults, Bitcoin wrapper, whatever it is users want to do with their BTC, there'll be a way to do it in the SDK.
I love it. So much rich content, so many different things that I want to kind of comment on that I'm trying to remember in my head. But like, I'm totally with you on the UX component. If we like, when you deposit Bitcoin into Coinbase, you're not trading, Coinbase Bitcoin, you're just trading Bitcoin, right? And why is that different in DeFi? And the other thing that you mentioned about like not even knowing that you're on Sui, I think that's something that has been overlooked up until recently. We have not appreciated the composability of blockchains and actually how powerful that is. And I think a great example of this is what's happening. Like anybody just comes in, builds a front end on just Hyperliquid or some other perp, and then some DEX, and that's like a standalone app, and you don't even know what chain you're on. And those are now starting to be very successful, and they start to make a lot of money, right? And we kind of realize, hey, wait a second, like anybody can just plug into Hyperliquid, or anybody can just plug into Sui, or anybody can plug into Momentum and use Momentum's liquidity with a different front end if they want to, right? So a ton of UX improvements to be had there for sure. I'm totally with you. Thank you for
exactly.
Thoughts,
Yeah, real quick, last thing. I often say that the power has shifted in distribution. The power in distribution has shifted from chains now to applications, where the Hyperliquids or the core apps on the chains are actually the people who are bringing in the users. And maybe the best thing that Sui or Lombard or some other underlying infrastructure can do to scale activity is just to sort of get out the way a little bit. Even though, maybe underlying infra becomes less at the forefront in terms of in users' mind, what this means is that we can scale activity 100x or 1000x or something like that. And then everybody wins.
Yes, love it. I'm totally with you on that one. Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing all of your thoughts. I'm gonna. I think this is a great way to end the stream. Again, visit sui.io/BTCFi. I think that's the website. That's where we have all of our BTCFi related content. Thank you to Callan, Charlie, Vinny, Luke, and Jacob from our BTC leading industry leaders for joining us on the stream. Love the content. Love the that you guys shared a lot of these insights into the projects that you're working on as well. And yeah, let's keep it going, and let's see how we can make things even better on Sui.